Before the world knew his name, before angels ever whispered his destiny, he was just a man standing by a river with a fishing line in his hand and kindness in his heart. He didn't know that a stranger's simple question, "Who are you?" would change the course of his life forever. What happened next would prove that even the smallest act of generosity can open the door to something far greater than we ever imagined. Welcome back, friends. Before we dive into today's story, if you're new here, take a moment to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a story that touches your heart. And if today's story moves you even a little, drop a comment and let us know where you're watching from. This channel is called Kindness Waves, and every single story we share here is a reminder that kindness, real, quiet, everyday kindness, has the power to ripple outward and change everything. Now, let's begin. There was a man named Enoch who lived a simple life near the edge of a wide, slow-moving river. He was not rich. He did not own grand fields or herds of cattle that stretched to the horizon. What he had was a small home, a loving family, and hands that knew how to work hard from sunrise to sunset. Enoch was the kind of man neighbors trusted. If someone needed help repairing a fence or carrying water from the well, Enoch was often the first to show up, sleeves rolled, ready to lend a hand without being asked twice. One quiet afternoon, Enoch walked down to the riverbank the way he often did, carrying his fishing line and a woven basket. The water was calm that day, catching the light in soft golden ripples, and for a while, Enoch simply sat there, breathing in the stillness. It was one of those rare moments where the noise of the world seemed to fade away, leaving only the sound of water lapping gently against the stones. He had not expected company. Out of nowhere, a voice greeted him. "Hello," it said, warm but unfamiliar. Enoch turned, startled, to see a man he had never laid eyes on before, standing at the edge of the trees where the path met the water. There was something different about this stranger, not threatening, not strange in a way that raised alarm, but different in a way that made Enoch pause and really look at him. "Who are you?" Enoch asked, more curious than cautious. "Hello," the stranger said again, almost as if testing the word, testing the moment. "I thought I was alone. I saw the river and thought it might be a good place to fish." Enoch smiled, a little amused. "It's not easy to fish around here," he said. "The current tricks you. You have to know where the fish like to rest." He studied the stranger for a moment longer, noting the calm in his eyes, the quiet dignity in the way he stood. "With whom do I have the pleasure of speaking?" "My name is Gabriel," the stranger replied simply. "I'm Enoch," he answered, offering a small nod, the kind of respectful greeting one gives a fellow traveler. Now, here's where the story could have ended just as quickly as it began. Enoch could have gone back to his line, back to his basket, back to his own thoughts, and let the stranger pass by like so many strangers do in our lives, a face we see once and never again. But instead, something in Enoch's heart nudged him toward generosity. "If you'd like," Enoch said, gesturing toward his basket, "I have fish here already. I can give you some. Don't worry about it." It was such a small thing. A basket of fish offered freely, without hesitation, without expecting anything in return. Enoch didn't know this stranger. He didn't know where he came from, what he needed, or whether he even deserved kindness in the eyes of the world. But Enoch didn't ask those questions. He simply saw a traveler by the river and offered what he had. This is the heart of every act of true kindness, isn't it? It rarely announces itself with trumpets or grand gestures. It shows up quietly in a basket of fish handed to a stranger, in a spare seat offered to someone standing on a crowded bus, in a warm meal shared with someone who looks tired and far from home. Kindness doesn't ask for credentials. It doesn't demand proof of worthiness. It simply gives. Gabriel looked at Enoch with something like quiet wonder. "Do you live nearby?" he asked. "I've never seen you around these parts before." "Actually, I'm just passing through," Gabriel said. "I'm not from here." Enoch nodded, accepting this the way people once did, without prying, without suspicion. "I understand," he said. "Well, I'll continue fishing. Wish me luck. I'll continue on my way as well, Gabriel replied. And then, before he turned to leave, he added something that would linger in Enoch's mind far longer than he expected. It was a pleasure, Enoch. I hope to see you again. And with that, the stranger disappeared down the path, leaving Enoch alone once more with the river, the basket, and a strange, warm feeling in his chest that he couldn't quite explain. That evening, Enoch returned home as the sun dipped low, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. His son ran out to greet him, the way children do, full of energy even after a long day. "Hello, Father," the boy said, wrapping his arms around Enoch's waist. "Hello, son," Enoch answered, ruffling his hair. "Welcome home, Father," the boy continued, walking beside him toward the house. Then, with the innocent boldness only children possess, he asked, "When will I be able to go with you, Methuselah?" Enoch's wife appeared in the doorway, smiling gently. "Let your father rest," she said, guiding the boy inside. That night, as the household settled into the quiet rhythms of evening, supper shared around the table, soft laughter, the comforting clatter of dishes being washed, Enoch felt something unusual stirring within him. He couldn't place it. It wasn't fear, not exactly. It was more like anticipation, like standing at the edge of something vast and unseen. He went to sleep that night the way he always did, beside his wife, the house quiet, the fire dimming to embers. But sleep did not bring him the peace he expected. In his dream, or perhaps in something far more real than a dream, Enoch found himself somewhere entirely unfamiliar. Gone was his home, his family, the familiar creak of his own floorboards. Instead, he stood in a vast, echoing space, unlike anything he had ever known. "Enoch! Enoch!" A voice called, and Enoch spun around, disoriented. Where am I?" He gasped, his heart pounding. "What is this?" Panic rose in his chest as he stumbled forward, calling out into the emptiness. What is this? Help!" His own voice echoed back at him, swallowed by the vastness surrounding him. He gasped for breath, confusion flooding every part of his being. What's happening? Then, cutting through the chaos, the voice came again, calm and steady. "Enoch! Enoch! Who are you?" Enoch demanded, his voice trembling. "Follow my messenger," the voice replied. "Follow who?" Enoch cried out, but before he could receive an answer, he woke with a start, gasping, drenched in sweat, his wife's concerned face hovering above him in the dim candlelight. "What's wrong, Enoch?" she asked softly, her hand resting on his shoulder. Enoch sat up, his breathing ragged, his mind racing to make sense of what he had just experienced. "I need to pray," he said, his voice hoarse. He cleared his throat and closed his eyes, folding his hands together. "Lord," he whispered, "I am here confused. Help me understand, so that I may do your will." He didn't know it yet, but that prayer would be answered in a way he never could have imagined, and it would begin exactly where his kindness had first been tested, by the river, with a stranger named Gabriel. The following days passed in a haze of uncertainty. Enoch went about his work, tended to his family, and tried to shake the unsettling weight of that dream. But something had shifted inside him. He found himself returning again and again to the riverbank, almost as if some invisible thread was pulling him back to the place where he had first met the stranger. One evening, as the sky began to soften into twilight, Enoch made his way once more to the river to pray. He needed the quiet, the space to think, to feel close to something greater than the confusion swirling in his mind. And there, waiting for him at the water's edge, stood Gabriel once again. "Hello, Enoch," Gabriel said, his voice as calm and warm as it had been on their first meeting. Enoch's breath caught. "The stranger," he murmured, half in disbelief. "It's a wonderful place to pray," Gabriel said, looking out over the water. "It's a beautiful view." Enoch studied him carefully, feeling that same strange pull he'd felt the first time they met. Only now it was mixed with a growing sense that this meeting was no accident. "You have found favor with the Most High, Enoch," Gabriel said quietly. Enoch's heart skipped. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice steadier now, more insistent. "Tell me the truth." "I'm a messenger," Gabriel answered, "who comes here with a purpose." "What purpose?" Enoch asked, his eyes searching the stranger's face for any sign of deception, but finding none. "Enoch," Gabriel said, his tone shifting into something more solemn, more weighty. "You were chosen to bring to the world everything that exists in the heavens. You will witness the greatness of the Most High." Enoch stumbled back a step, overwhelmed. "Me? A simple man?" "You will write down what you see," Gabriel continued, "and do not be afraid, because you will walk on holy ground." Enoch sank to his knees, the weight of these words pressing down on him like nothing he had ever felt before. But then Gabriel reached out, his voice gentle. "Rise, Enoch. I'm a servant, just as you are." Slowly, Enoch stood. "It would be an honor," he said, his voice trembling but resolute. But then Gabriel's expression grew serious, and something in his eyes told Enoch that what came next would not be easy. "There is something you must know," Gabriel said. "This is a journey with no return, Enoch. You must say goodbye to your family." The words landed like stones in Enoch's chest. He thought of his wife's gentle smile, his son's eager questions, the warmth of his home, the simple, precious life he had built. And now he was being asked to leave it all behind, not knowing when or if he would ever return. That night, Enoch walked home slower than usual, his mind heavy with the enormity of what lay ahead. When he arrived, his family was waiting, as they always did, with warmth and welcome. But this time, Enoch knew he had to tell them the truth. He gathered them close, his wife and his son, and took a deep breath. "I'm going to travel far," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I don't know how long I'll be gone, but I just want you to know that I love you." His son looked up at him, confusion and worry mixing in his young eyes. "Father, can I go with you?" Enoch knelt down, pulling his son into his arms, holding him tightly, memorizing the feeling of that small body against his chest. "Not this time, son," he whispered. "I love you," his son said, his voice muffled against his father's shoulder. "I love you too," Enoch answered, his voice breaking. And in that moment, in that simple, aching goodbye, the entire story of Enoch's kindness came full circle. Because it wasn't the extraordinary calling, the vision, or the divine encounter that defined who Enoch truly was. It was the way he lived his life every single day before any of that ever happened. It was the fish he offered a stranger without asking questions. It was the hand he extended to neighbors without expecting anything in return. It was the love he poured into his family, quietly, consistently, without fanfare. Kindness, you see, is rarely rewarded with grand visions or angelic messengers. Most of the time, kindness is its own reward, a warmth that settles in your chest when you help someone who cannot repay you, a quiet joy that comes from giving simply because you can. But every so often, life reminds us that kindness plants seeds we cannot always see. Enoch had no idea, that afternoon by the river, that the stranger he fed with such little thought would return one day to change the entire trajectory of his life. He had no idea that his willingness to share, to trust, to open his heart to someone unfamiliar was in fact a test and a doorway. How many of us have had moments like that in our own lives? A stranger we helped without thinking twice. A small act of generosity offered on an ordinary day, with no idea of the ripple it might create. Maybe he was holding a door open for someone struggling with too many bags. Maybe he was paying for a stranger's coffee in the drive-thru line. Maybe he was simply listening, really listening to someone who needed to be heard. We rarely know, in the moment, just how far those small acts can travel. Think about the people in your own life who have shaped you through small kindnesses. A teacher who noticed you were struggling and took an extra few minutes after class to help. A neighbor who brought over a meal during a hard week without being asked. A stranger who returned a lost wallet with everything still inside. These moments may seem small in isolation, but they are the threads that weave the fabric of a life well lived, and often a life that touches far more people than we realize. Enoch's story teaches us something profound about the nature of kindness. It doesn't require us to know the future, to understand the full picture, or to see the reward before we act. Kindness asks only that we respond to the moment in front of us with an open heart. Enoch didn't know that Gabriel was anything more than a hungry traveler by the river. He simply saw someone who might need help, and he gave freely. And isn't that the truest form of kindness? Not the kind we perform for recognition, not the kind we calculate for future benefit, but the kind that flows naturally from a heart that has learned to notice others, to care about their well-being even when there's nothing in it for us. In our modern world, it's easy to walk past people without truly seeing them. We are busy, distracted, hurried along by schedules and screens and the endless noise of daily life. But every single day, we are given small opportunities, moments at the grocery store, at the gas station, at the office, in our own neighborhoods, to choose kindness. To offer a smile to someone who looks exhausted. To let another driver merge into traffic without honking. To ask a coworker how they're really doing and actually wait for the answer. We may never know, the way Enoch eventually came to know, just how significant our small acts of kindness truly are. We may never receive a vision, a divine calling, or a messenger appearing at our riverbank to tell us our lives are about to change. But that doesn't mean our kindness matters any less. In fact, it might matter more, precisely because it is offered without any expectation of cosmic reward. Enoch's journey teaches us something else too, something about sacrifice. When Gabriel told him this would be a journey with no return, Enoch could have refused. He could have clung to the comfort of his home, the safety of his familiar life, the warmth of his family's embrace. Many of us, faced with a calling that demanded so much, might have turned away. But Enoch chose to answer, even knowing the cost. This is perhaps one of the hardest truths about a life devoted to kindness and purpose. Sometimes it asks us to give up comfort for something greater. Sometimes love means letting go, even when it breaks our hearts to do so. Enoch's goodbye to his son, that simple, tender exchange of "I love you" and "I love you too," reminds us that even in moments of profound sacrifice, love remains the anchor that holds everything together. We don't all receive callings as dramatic as Enoch's. Most of us will never be asked to leave everything behind and walk into the unknown. But in smaller ways, every one of us is called, again and again, to choose kindness over convenience, generosity over self-interest, love over indifference. And just like Enoch, we rarely know in advance where those choices will lead us. Consider this. Somewhere out there right now, someone is standing at their own version of a riverbank, uncertain, searching, wondering if anyone will notice them, if anyone will offer them kindness in a moment when they feel like a stranger in the world. It might be a new coworker who doesn't know anyone yet. It might be an elderly neighbor who hasn't had a real conversation in days. It might be someone quietly struggling behind a smile that doesn't quite reach their eyes. We may not know their whole story. We may not understand their purpose, their journey, or where their path will lead. But like Enoch, we don't need to know all of that to offer them kindness. We simply need to see them, to notice them, and to respond with an open hand and an open heart. And here's the beautiful truth this story leaves us with. Kindness has a way of finding its way back to us, often when we least expect it, and often in forms far greater than we ever imagined. Enoch offered fish to a stranger, expecting nothing in return, and that small act of generosity opened a doorway to something extraordinary. We cannot always predict where our kindness will lead, but we can trust that it is never wasted. It ripples outward, touching lives we may never